think so to kind of go into it, it's really about what is guaranteed and assured rental income. What's the advantages of it? What's the disadvantages of it? And what's the difference between going for something like this and renting it with a local estate agent or just the normal traditional way? And also, where does it imply? Like, where is it necessary to have things like guaranteed rental income?
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to ask you what do you think are the benefits of both, and the non-benefits as well.
So benefits of having a rental guarantee, rental assurance, or not? Yeah.
Yeah. So the sort of the different. And let's say, for the sake, let's just talk right now about traditional residence, so an apartment, city centre.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess starting with. Let's start with the guaranteed rental assurance.
Guaranteed, okay. So what is guaranteed rent?
Well, guaranteed rent typically means that money, let's say it's a 5-year rental guarantee, the money for the full 5 years is there, ready to cover any, because it could potentially be empty for 5 years.
So they have to have the money in the bank. Whoever's giving you this guarantee.
That's the technical definition of it. The term guarantee gets used a lot, often when it's actually a rental assurance, which is more of a contractual obligation of the management company to pay you whatever the pre-agreed rent is for that period of time.
So that's a contractual agreement. That's all that is.
Regardless of occupancy rates, that management company has agreed to pay you X rent on X date for X number of years, regardless of occupancy.
Yeah.
So if they don't, contract is null and void. Simple. So it's in their interest to do it. So why? Okay, pros and cons of each, and what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, for you anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so on residential property, having a rental guarantee, for me, it sort of takes away any element of not risk but uncertainty. Like, when you've got it on a non-fixed rent, let's use the term fixed instead.
Okay.
It's almost fixed versus non-fixed. Non-fixed is it fluctuates with the market. So year 1, you'll get. Year 2, you might get a different rent to year 1. Year 3, you might get a different rent. Year 4, you get a different rent, and it should, in theory, go up, but it equally could go down.
Yeah.
So it's fluctuating. Whereas the other one isn't.
It's just the same.
It's just going to stay the same.
Set same for whatever period of time you've agreed.
Yeah. So you can accurately predict. Okay, let's say you buy with a mortgage, for example. I'm taking a 5-year fixed rate mortgage. It's going to cost me £200 a month from a mortgage, for argument's sake. I'm going to spend £50 a month on the service charge and ground rent, whatever, and X number on whatever else. And my mortgage is this.
Yeah.
My rent is this, my cost is this, my profit is this.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Yeah.
And also, if you're an investor rather than a landlord, you want to make it as hands-off as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
So,
I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits to it is, it's hands-off and it's, completely hassle-free. So I think they call it an armchair investment.
Investment. Yeah.
You basically just sit back and let the sort of income come in.
Yeah.
No one's going to call you up saying,
I've lost my keys, I've lost
the light bulb's broken, or the boilers.
Like, you need to learn how to change a light bulb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're not going to be dealing with any of these issues, which I think is one of the most common reasons people don't like property investing is because of the hassle of tenants and
there are a lot of, don't get me wrong, I think most landlords have got a horror story. Yeah. Not a horror story, but everyone's had an experience.
Difficulty
like
with tenants.
Yes, something's gone wrong, the tenants had issues for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, and it can be a bit of a headache. When you've got your busy day job, or you've got time with your family, and all of a sudden you've got to go and drive to the property and fix a leak or figure out.
Send a plumber across and pay for him, and he needs paying, and then you're not letting him in.
Yeah, that's why the rental assurance model, for me personally, I quite like, because you don't have to think about any of that. But then, I guess, like I said, on the non-assured model, you could make a bit more money.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's if you are gonna do this as a full-time job, so if you're going to be a property investor, and that's all you are going to do, and you're going to spend your whole entire time managing and looking after the properties that you own, then fine, you would maybe make a bit more money by doing that. You're not paying a management company to deal with anything, so you'll make sort of that profit on top. And I suppose you could always vet your own tenants anyway before they come in. So the idea is it could work out as well. Okay, so in terms of sort of residential property, I know we spoke about things. We've got the assured and the guaranteed. I think one sort of other type of sector where a lot of people find things are guaranteed or assured are sectors which aren't typically available to just, like we couldn't just go and rent them ourselves. So things like student accommodation, care homes, hotels, whatever it is. I couldn't go and rent these out on.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you had a care home, you're on Rightmove looking for.
I'm looking to stay. Yeah, I think it's a very specialist type of.
It needs a specialist management company.
Yeah.
For that type of asset.
And that's where I was going to say it's necessary to have a company like that involved, who will manage it for you. Because I think in these sectors, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of money involved in terms of the rentals. Yeah. So, like serviced accommodation, you are going to make a lot more money.
Yeah.
If you own a hotel room, that hotel room will generate a lot of money, as opposed to even a house in the UK, because it will charge anywhere between 100, 200, 300 pounds a night. And if they rent them out for a couple of months, every single day, there's a lot of good money behind it. But I couldn't rent it myself because I don't have.
You never run a hotel before, have you?
Unless I owned my own hotel management company, I personally couldn't do it.
Yeah.
What would you say the pros and cons are for something like this? And let's say I gave an example where for 5 years I'm going to guarantee you 10%, so it's a very high return. For 5 years I'm going to guarantee you 10.
Yeah. Pros and cons of that type of asset class.
Yeah, let's go for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a pro is a high return, isn't it? Great.
I think,
Hands off, high return.
Guaranteed.
Hassle free. Nothing to really think about. It's almost like putting your money in the bank and making a really high return, and that's it.
Yeah.
But for me, the con is not a con. That sounds awful. It's not a con. It's the negative. Is that that type of asset can be very tricky to sell. So because you have the rental guarantee typically built in to the lease or to the purchase agreement, it makes it a lot more difficult from a lending point of view. So typically stuff like student accommodation, care homes, hotel rooms, etc., you can't get a mortgage on them.
Of course.
And
why would you say that is? Because I think that's a common theory that they think they can, and if you can't, why not? Why aren't they lending?
It's the lenders really. Their sort of take on it is, okay, there's a property here that Mr. Smith is being paid his 10% a year, and all of a sudden he carries on getting his 10% a year, but he decides, I'm not paying this mortgage now for whatever reason. The bank then repossesses the property.
Yeah.
How do they then sell it? Because there's still a management agreement there paying Mr. Smith 10% a year, and even if that gets terminated, it's still very tricky for them to go and sell that property to somebody else. It's not your straightforward residential, so it's a whole new sector to them.
And the problem is I won't say it's a problem, but you're buying into the contract more exactly. Than
the asset,
the actual asset itself. Because if let's be honest, like a hotel room that could be sold, let's say for £80,000.
Yeah.
You could buy an apartment in a sort of, maybe not the big city, but in a area you could buy a property for £80,000, or at least put a mortgage down or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you bought a hotel room for £80,000, it's not really worth that.
It's not worth £80,000.
Isn't worth £80,000.
No.
It's only worth £80,000 because of really what's around it. Because it's got the facilities. Because it's in this.
Yeah, because of the
hotel. It's in this area, by the sea, whatever it is. That's the reason why it's worth, and because it brings in someone who wants to stay in that room.
Yeah, and pays
that money. Without everything else. It's just a room, as opposed to an actual property or an apartment.
Yeah.
You could say the same thing. You could say, well, it's in this area or it's this, but it's actually because the property is this size. It's a price per square foot. And
also residential property is valued based on the bricks and mortar valuation.
And that as well, yeah.
It's how much is this property worth, sort of as a property.
Mm.
Things like that are valued on a commercial basis. So they're valued based on how much income does this property or does this asset generate.
Yeah, and that's how much I will sell it for based
Exactly.
on how
Yeah.
much am I.
So you're often paying quite a lot for these properties because they're valued on that basis.
Mm.
Yeah, but to be fair, you're going to make a good return. So why not? But the
I
issue.
think one thing you said earlier, just going back to it, is you said it's difficult to get out of it. It's difficult to sell. I know a lot of them offer guaranteed buyback options,
Yeah.
or just, any kind of buyback option really.
Mhm.
I would say the one thing about that is that's great,
Mhm.
and let's say that buyback option is at year 5, year 10,
Yeah.
and then some other years. That's fine as well. But if you want to sell before then or after then, or it's
Limited.
it's possible, but it is limited.
It's limited because your who you're going to sell it to is another. You can only sell it to another investor, and it has to
Yeah.
be somebody who will buy for cash.
Yeah.
Whereas a residential property, you can sell to another investor who's buying for cash.
Mm.
You can sell to another investor who's buying with a mortgage. You can sell to an owner-occupier who's buying with cash, or an owner-occupier who's buying with a mortgage. Or if you can remortgage it yourself to release the cash that you've put into it. So you've got different exit options. With
Yeah.
those types of properties, if there's a buyback in place, you just need to know how are they going to buy it back. Like, what is the strategy for the owner, the management company, and also why are they going to buy it back?
That's a good one. Yeah. Why are they going to buy it back? What's in it
Yeah.
for them to buy it back?
I mean, I know usually the business model for that type of thing is it's they know that over the 5 years, or however many years it is, by the end of that point, they'll have a track record of it performing, well for 5 years and generating a certain level of income. They can then go and get it valued on a commercial basis at the new
Yeah.
value, and then they take finance out on the new value.
Mm.
They buy it back at the lower rate.
Mm.
Let's say, for argument's sake, they get it revalued, and the commercial basis is 150,000, and they've previously sold it for 100,000 with a 5% uplift. They go, all right, cool, we'll buy it back from you for 105. We know it's worth 150. We've got an instant 45k,
Yeah, and
equity.
we can easily.
and we'll carry on renting it.
And you've got no other option but to take our offer,
Exactly.
because what else are you going to do with
Yeah.
it? I think another similar one is obviously student accommodation, which is very popular, and it always has been. Well, it has been for that. I think that's like 10, 12 years or so.
Yeah.
And I think it's. I don't think it's awful by any shape.
No.
I would say it's a similar model to what we are discussing here. Like, it's a very similar model to sort of hotels.
Yeah.
It's based on the student market. So as long as there's students who want to rent the property, then there is going to always be a demand for this type of accommodation. And I'm aware that there's a lot of students who are living in these cities, and there's a lot of demand for it. Again, they offer the same kind of model where it's a studio 1-bedroom sort of size apartment anyway, and then it's guaranteed for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Again, there's no mortgage options as well. A lot of them offer rental returns, sometimes not even buybacks though. A lot of these offer sort of rental returns for
3 years,
3-5 years. And what happens after that third and fifth year? So what happens, it's say year 6th, and they're getting 8%, and then in that year it drops down. So let's say they're getting 8, and all of a sudden now they're getting 5.
Yeah.
What options do they really have
Well,
at that point? Because
very few.
unless someone really wants to take a 5%
Which they're not.
return,
They're
which
not.
they're not.
No investor is going to come in and buy a completed student property that's only getting a 5% return when you've got a brand new one just there. If they're set on buying student property, you've got a completed one that's generating 5%, it's 5 years old.
Mm.
You go, well, it's a little bit,
Yeah.
it's 5 years old. This one here is brand spanking new, so it's new, more glamorous, that sort of thing. And they're going to pay me the same price. They're going to pay me 8% for 5 years. You're going to go with that one.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. So the only way you could exit in this situation, you'd have to drop your price, because you've got to make it attractive to a new investor.
And then you've taken a loss.
And then you've taken a loss. So the money that you've made for the last 5 years, you've just lost in dropping your price. So
and that can happen. I'm not saying it always does. I think some student accommodation
can, it does happen. Not always. You're right.
Not always. Yeah, it can, and I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So which is the risk you take? I think
exactly. Yeah. You're limited.
I think the problem you'll find with student accommodation, and this is the one problem that I think I've seen really happening in the last couple of years, is everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Like everyone is building student accommodation.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is trying to, sell these studios or one-bedroom apartments. And although there is a demand, and I'm not going to say there's not a demand, at what point does it become we've got enough student accommodation?
Yeah.
And is there enough, students to fill these? And especially if it's not like in the city centre, or it's not near the university.
I think that's the key. If you are going to invest in something like that, it's location and facilities. And even then, you're right. Like, there's other buildings popping up, and sometimes students might go, do you know what? I'll live here for a year, but then I'll made friends, or got a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Yeah.
We'll get an apartment.
I mean, even a house. I mean, I think most students do end up doing that anyway. I think most of them do end up choosing the option to rent a house out, multiple rooms.
It's more sort of like the transition to, going from child to being an adult. Student accommodation is great for a year or two, but then they're like, well, I want a bit more independence. I like the facilities, yes, that's fine. I want my own space, I don't want to share a living room with 500 other people, sort of thing. Yeah. So I get why people stay there, and I've seen some amazing student accommodation buildings, but I think you're right. And there's certainly some cities where it feels like they're at a point now. They've sort of probably should stop building any more student accommodation.
Yeah. I mean, students. I think people seem to get is students aren't limited just to student accommodation.
No.
If a student wants to go and live in a one-bedroom apartment, trust me, no one's telling me he's not going to do it. And if it's the same price, then why not? Why wouldn't he do it?
Good point. But I'm certainly not bashing student accommodation. I'm not saying I think it's a bad asset class, but I just think it depends what you're looking to do. If you're if you're looking to just put money into something, never think about it, and never really worry too much about an exit or anything like that. Yeah, can work. But I would still, if somebody came to me and said, okay, what would you recommend? I'd be like, just buy an apartment somewhere. Unless sometimes I guess people are looking to only spend 50 grand or 60 grand cash. Okay, go and buy an apartment, buy with a mortgage.
I think that's the thing about student accommodation or any of these, is the fact that you can't buy the mortgage. I think that's the main. Yeah. Because if I know we've looked at it, but the numbers actually don't stack up. If let's say you can get an 8 to 10% return, but if you look at using a buy-to-let mortgage and the money you're putting in only, so the return on investment on the amount that you're putting in. Can be up to sort of 15%, 13, 15%.
For the same level of cash.
For the same level of cash. So I have £100,000, I can buy one student accommodation for £100,000.
Well, and get like a 6, 7, 8%.
Yeah, so £6,000, 7,000, £8,000. Or I could buy 3 houses, or 3 apartments, sorry.
Or even, exactly.
And get
1, 2, 3 apartments.
15%, 13% on that 100,000.
Yeah. You're preaching to the converter.
Yeah, I mean that's
why I say to everyone, whether you're a UK investor or overseas investor, the aim of the game is ROI, return on investment, and to get it as high as possible.
Yeah.
So why sink more of your cash into the property? Let the banks at the minute, the interest rates are at record lows.
Yeah.
Let the bank pay for 70 or 75% of
the
asset.
Yeah. Why not?
And then when that property goes up in value, the bank doesn't benefit from that. You benefit from that.
Yeah.
So take advantage of it.
And also, you're going to have the growth as well.
That's what I mean.
I mean, the growth. You're going to have, both things are there. So you're getting paid twice.
I was thinking, you mean you're getting a good return,
and you're getting let's say 12 to 13% to be on the safe side of what you're really going to get
from your rental income. You're making 12, 13% on the cash that you've invested.
And as long as it's in a good area, it's going to go up in value. I think a lot. I know, going back to sort of hotel student, although it can go up in value, and I think sometimes they offer 1-2% uplifts,
Yeah.
which is good. Don't get me wrong. But let's say you bought in Manchester 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and you bought an apartment, and you got a. Well, and no, let's take an example. Someone bought a student property, cash.
We should do that. We should do another. this is a whole other conversation. But
Okay, fine.
I know exactly what you mean. Like,
Someone bought something cash, and then
5 years ago and this 5
someone
years ago.
bought something with a mortgage.
Yeah.
So one of them was a student property, and one of them was a residential property.
that person.
How much has his property gone up in value? Probably like I think 20 more than that.
Like Manchester.
5 years ago.
In the 20s.
20 to 30%.
Yeah.
Plus he's now
he's
getting a
getting-
good amount of income.
If he bought it with a mortgage, he's probably made, like we said, 15% a year
Yeah.
return on investment.
Plus this, and this person is basically getting his 7-8%, and they might guarantee him. And in fact, I don't know if they do. Maybe they might be looking to be guaranteed 1% uplift.
Well, if it's student, it probably hasn't.
No,
So
probably
you know
not.
that. So, yeah.
And the return isn't changing as well.
No.
They're not going to change the guarantee.
And at the end of 5 years, it might stay the same, might drop down a little bit.
Well, yeah, if it's guaranteed, the point I'm trying to make is you can't.
It's not going to. Yeah, it's not going to benefit from any increase in the market.
Yeah, like I'm not going to pay more than what you paid for it. If
Yeah.
you're only guaranteed 8%,
Yeah.
you're not going to sell it to me for more, and I get 6%. No,
Yeah.
I want 8% as well.
Yeah.
So,
So you want zero
if
growth.
that's not increasing in rental
Yeah.
returns, then I wouldn't go for that.
Yeah. I think that would be a really interesting thing to work out. I think some people will be very happy because they've made a lot of money. Some people will be kicking themselves because they've.
Don't get me, this person, to be fair,
Yeah.
will have at least not had to do anything really and just
I guess, yeah.
chill out and whatever.
And still, if they've made 7-8% a year for 5 years,
Yeah.
it's still a heck of a lot more than you get in the bank.
True,
To be
yeah.
fair. But then, I guess, like you said, if you want to sell it now? How easy is that going to be? Who are you going to sell it to? And do
Yeah.
you need to drop your price in order to sell it? In which case, how much of your return is that going to cancel out?
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So,
Alright.
but no, it's interesting. I'm definitely not slagging off those other asset classes at all. It's just
No,
for
no.
me,
We've worked with them,
I
we
think
know what they are,
it
but
works well for a lot of investors. It depends on the strategy of the investor, I guess. But for me, regardless of the strategy,
I
residential
think
buy to let
there's one thing I remember having a conversation with someone about this. He goes, "These are really good when you've just got the spare cash to do it." And I kind of agree with that. If you invest into a lot of things and you're already getting a kind of a good hefty amount of income coming in from different sort of properties, different sectors, and you have a spare, a couple of £100,000 you want to put into property, that could be a really good option because completely hassle free, you're going to get your income anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah,
All right.
Good.
Okay. Cool.